Okay, cool. The agenda for today's session is going to be 4 topics. The first one is going to be the course objective, and the second one is the tools and technologies we're going to learn during this course. And the third part is going to be detailed course content. Going to go through the course content in detail and show you how we're going to deal this course in the next 25 to 30 sessions. And finally, we'll have a question and answers, and we'll try to answer some of the questions what you get in terms of what is going to be the course and how we're going to deal this course and what are the technologies we're going to learn and how do we get updated to that. Okay, let's start with the course objective. So the course objective is to learn the following 5 different topics. The prerequisite for this course is if you have any previous knowledge of HANA Studio, working in HANA database, creating some tables, views, procedures, kind of SQL programming, and also having some models created in HANA database. Example, having calculation views or previously attribute analytical views, etc., and doing some table functions and etc., and then consume these models in analytical applications. These kind of activities, if you have it involved in one of those activities or some of those activities, it will be a good start for you, and it's a good added advantage for you to get started with this course. Even though you didn't have that previous background, which is also okay, because you can get started from the greenfield perspective. So the objective of this course is going to be greenfield development in HANA Access Advanced. So we're going to learn how Access Advanced is going to be designed and different new tools used for Access Advanced development, like Web IDE for HANA, Git, and Access Advanced Cockpit, HANA Cockpit, and different services and applications and etc. We're going to see all of them as a greenfield development. So we will start this object development freshly, and we'll start building them, deploying them, and go through several errors which we get during this part of the process. And the second one is migration. The second topic is migration of Access Classic to Access Advanced. So probably you would have heard about, or you would have seen this Access Classic, the previous application server for HANA platform, which is going to be in HANA Studio. So there have been several models developed in Access Classic. So we're going to see how these models will be migrated into Access Advanced. So the migration path, the migration checklist, the prerequisite for the migrations, and how the best practices to this migration, we're going to discuss in very detail. The third topic is going to be HANA application development basics. This is little different than what we used to do in the past. The application development is consist of mainly application programming languages like Node.js, XSJS, and XS OData. We used to have XSJS and XS OData in the past. Now we have Node.js, Java, and different environments for programming, and then we can consume those application programs in UI. So this is, if you are really looking for a specific modeling course, this is not really something which is your topic of interest, but I would definitely say having some knowledge in application development will definitely help you to do some of the work related to application developers, and you can actually understand the architecture in a very high level, at least for to support the application developers. And the next topic is going to be HANA as a service and cloud platform, which is on Cloud Foundry. So so far all these things which we've been talking in on-premise world, and we also need to look at the HANA available on cloud, because that's when the SAP most of the innovations happening in cloud first and then on-premise after. So it's very important to understand how HANA as a service is available in cloud platform as part of Cloud Foundry environment. So we're going to spend some time in those topics as well. Finally, we will touch base on the mixed scenarios with BW for HANA and S4 HANA. So the mixed scenarios of how the BW models will be consumed in Access Advanced and vice versa. And similarly for S4 HANA, so how the S4 HANA tables or ERP tables will be consumed in HDI containers using synonyms process. There are a few different processes we will use to consume the S4 models, and we'll go through them in detail. So this is going to be the objective of this course, and it's going to be 25 to 30 hours or sessions, and uh, it will be a very interesting subject because a lot of things which you see in this course are new and not been done in the past of SAP HANA or SAP world. Generally, for the people who have the background of BAP, BW, or any kind of programming languages in SAP world, will see it as a different programming model because of having some services, Cloud Foundry architectures, microservices architectures. This is going to be completely interesting subject to learn and get up to date on this latest technologies of SAP. Okay. If you have any questions in between, you always put it in the chat window. I'll be able to answer in between the topics. It doesn't have to be very specific to the topic I just described. Any question about the course and what is required and what else need to be learned during this course of action, you can ask in the questions window, the chat window. Okay, I'll move on to the next topic. Okay, just I would like to explain the course content in very detail. Thus, I think I already shared the course content with few of the participant, but I'm just going to go through the course content again. I'll be sharing this course content with you so that you can take a look at it after this session. Okay, here I have 5 to 6 weeks of content, and the detailed content will start with introduction to Access Advanced and architecture and creation of XSA users and etc. So we'll go into the details of the course. In this current session, I'm going to explain a very little summary of each topic what I'm going to cover in this particular course. So I'm going to start with the architecture of Access Advanced and at a very high level, but just don't get overwhelmed with this explanation right now, just because within 1 hour you will not be able to understand this whole architecture completely. So you'll get to the details in later stage when you get into the topics in detail, but for now just try to make some understanding of how these different topics will club together to be part of this course. Okay, I was just going to start with the architecture here. So you can see these two diagrams on my screen. The one on the left hand side is your Access Classic, and the one on the right hand side is your Access Advanced. So many of you probably would have seen Access Classic development using HANA Studio, working in HANA database, using repository for your procedures, functions, and calculation views, and etc. At the same time, you might be using development workbench for graphical or web-based workbench for doing some flow graphs and etc. And all this time you are using Access Classic runtime, Access Engine, and inside that Access Classic application server, you have Access OData and Access JavaScript as APIs to consume or to connect to your database and provide the interface to your not reporting applications, but to the front-end UI application. There were very few projects which have had custom UI applications built on Access Classic runtime. So most of the customers have a solid BAP application server. So the usage of Access OData and Access.js was very limited in the past. Okay, the primary development tool for us in Access Classic is HANA Studio or Eclipse. So you can use one of them. And the developments are going to involve in the repository as well as in the catalog. So all the runtime objects are going to be saved or activated in runtime as database objects, and all your repository or the content objects like procedures, functions, all of them will be in your HANA repository. And then now the architecture has been changed. There is no HANA repository in Access Advanced. You'll not have any content repository to attach to your database. It was the drawback, or it was the limitation in Access Classic. You always attach your database to a repository, and then you cannot separate your source code version control within outside of HANA database. That was a big challenge to work with HANA repository and HANA database for multiple developers. So to overcome the challenge, we got Git repository, external Git repository. It is not tied to your HANA database and externally maintained, and perfect tool for source control and version management. Okay, so you will have your database, and there is a external Git repository. And all the work you're going to do in your database, you will be using WebIDE for HANA. That's a new tool which is being given by SAP. And you got Access Advanced Runtime. Instead of your Access Classic Runtime, you have Access Advanced Runtime, which contains all your previous APIs like Access.js or data, and also new runtimes given like Node.js, Java, Python, or any bring your own language or different runtimes. This is very good advancement for application developers, where they code an API layer to connect to the database and give this to UI as a custom application in SAP HANA system. If you're looking only from the analytics perspective, this is not a big use of it, because you're going to connect to the database directly from an analytical applications, which could be your analytics cloud, your analysis office, or design studio, or any of such analytical applications. Same case with your classic as well. So you're going to connect to the database directly when you're especially dealing with analytical models like CVs, or externally consumed by reporting applications. So we'll not discuss more on the application programming language, but definitely we'll go into the basics of the application programming and see how it is being connected to your modeling situations. Because finally the database is going to be same for your application development as well as your analytical development. Okay, and one important thing to note here is you still have your HANA Studio or Access Classic runtime available. They're not removed yet. SAP announced that they're going to remove very soon. They didn't say very soon, but with some major release, maybe HANA 3 or some point in time. So do not get confused that migrating or moving to HANA 2.0 doesn't mean that you have to go on Access Advanced Runtime. There are many clients who are currently running on Access Classic, even though they migrated to HANA 2.0, SP03, or even very soon. Okay, so you can continue to have your HANA Studio and Access Classic runtime to work with your HANA database, even though you are on 2.0. So don't get confused that HANA 2 means it is Access Advanced or WebIDE must be used. No, but it is true in cloud though. If you're working on a cloud platform, not an on-premise system, Access Classic is being removed already. I've seen this behavior 6 months ago when I was working on one of the projects on Cloud Foundry HANA service, the HANA 2.0 SP04. There wasn't any Classic, so you cannot connect HANA database to Classic Studio. So you have to use WebIDE full stack in order to make your developments, which has to be in HDI infrastructure, HANA development infrastructure. Shortly, you can call HDI. Okay, so it's already happened in cloud. So it's going to be very soon. It is going to happen in on-premise as well. So get ready. We'll have to make sure that we are up to date with the latest technologies used in Access Advanced, so that we can have a smooth migration from Classic to Advanced, as well as new greenfield development in Access Advanced. Okay. Any questions? Just going to see if there are any questions here. Okay, I'll start from the first. Yes, I'm recording this, and SAP material. The SAP material I usually follow is the TechEd material, DAT courses from the 2018 and 2019, and also the certification material, which is HA 300 and HA 1. Basically, it's HA 300. And there's a question about the pain points of Access Classic. I definitely take some more time in the future sessions, but briefly I can tell again. So just to name three of them, the repository was really attached to your database, and multiple developers were not able to work at the same time. There was a once you check out your object in the developer workspace, and then you are holding that, and the other developer has to wait for you. And actually, even though there is a kind of a future change you wanted to do, you cannot do this with your HANA repository. And with GitHub, it's very powerful. And if you're really coming from the other background, Java, .NET world, Microsoft world, GitHub has been very popular and widely used in across the um, industry. So you can work, multiple developers can work at the same time, and they can share the code, and they can have a feature branches. They can commit multiple times, and it's very effective. It's very effective for source control, and multiple developers can work simultaneously or parallelly. So that's one big change they wanted to put it in. And the second biggest change what SAP wanted to put it in was the runtimes. Previously, they were only XSJS and XSOData were the runtimes, and they were customized for only for SAP. Now it's open source. Node.js is really very powerful open source module runtime. So you have thousands of libraries available in the market to ready-madely. SAP doesn't have to develop anything for you, which was the case in Access Classic. So you have Java runtime, you have, so bring just your own language. There are runtimes available. You don't have to worry about how the compilation is going to happen in the background. It's going to it's going to be taken care by your Access Advanced runtime, because they have the runtimes for each programming language now. So pretty open market standard, which is Cloud Foundry is offering in outside world, and now they made it SAP way as named as Access Advanced runtime. So you can call Access Advanced as a on-premise way of Cloud Foundry, if you are familiar with Cloud Foundry topics. Okay, which then there are multiple other like HDI infrastructure, because before we used to have sysrepo as the powerful user, which has every access on all the objects in your content, all the CVs. Now the access is going to be based on your containers. So very restricted access you will be providing to the consumers. The security has been significantly changed from the past to the current. These yeah, there are multiple. I mean, we'll discuss them when we go into the course, but these are the ones which stand at very top level. Calculation views will not be going to, so far I haven't in my screen. I don't know whether you've been looking at here. So this is more about application development I'm talking about, but the HDI infrastructure or your HANA database is going to contain your CVs. All your modeling is going to be done inside your HDI containers. So the modeling is not going anywhere. So you're still going to do sophisticated models using calculation views. That's, and then, but just the biggest changes you'll be doing it within the HDI infrastructure, HANA deployment infrastructure, with the source control to Git repository within the Cloud Foundry principles. But the navigations to do those calculation views, procedures, creation, SQL is going to be the same, but the principles going to be changed in the backend, which was really easy in the past in Access Classic using Studio. You directly write the SQL, and there were no file-based build and deployment process. But in Access Advanced, a little bit or more process changed in terms of file-based. We're going to see them in the next 30 minutes of this session, how it's different from your past. So it's a bit early for you to answer get the answer to your question. Okay. The reasons for migration I already explained. They're going to remove Access Classic at some point in time with the next major release. So it could be your HANA 3 or SP06, 2.0 SP06, we never know. So we're not going to discuss any best practices right now. I'll come to the next topic. Okay. So the next topic I'm going to talk about tools and technologies. What we're going to learn, what are the different new tools we will be looking at in this course. So you can see I just named 8 of them. Some of them are very important, and most of the time we will be spending in learning in these technologies. And there might be some more, but very not to the extent of how these tools being used. Okay, the first one is being the Web ID that's being the number one or most important tool which you will be spending most of your time during this course. So Web ID for HANA is a web-based IDE tool developed by SAP. So it's going to allow you to create all the development artifacts and make it built, and then when you deploy this, when they get created as runtime objects in your database. So we're going to just take a look at how this tool looks like to put this. So this is the tool what I'm talking about. So you have a web link which is provided by, it's a service, it's an application. So you get this web link, and then once you open, this is an Access Advanced server. This is decoupled from your HANA database. The user and password are going to be different for Access Advanced, and then you create a project in your web IDE, and then inside that project you create a DB module, and inside the DB module you're going to create tables, views, procedures, functions, and calculation views. So that's the process you're going to apply when you start working in Access Advanced Web IDE. So you're not going to do the way how do you do in HANA Studio, because this is going to follow microservice architecture. So you always have the design time artifacts, just the files, and when you build them, they're going to create it as a runtime objects in the database, so that you can access the database from Database Explorer here. So we're going to look at how to access the database, a classic database, and also HDI based container database in the DBA Explorer. But all of your developments are going to happen in your developer workspace in Web IDE for HANA. So once you make your changes, then when you build them, the HDI containers are going to get created in the backend. One second, I'm going to mute. Okay, sorry for that. So yeah, you will start doing the developments inside the Web IDE for HANA, and then you start building, which is making activated, and then deployment process usually done by administrators. So you don't have activation process or promotion process like previously used to do. Change list, all these things are completely gone, replaced by GitHub. So you have a Git integration within your web IDE. So you can see that Git repository attached to your web IDE. So as soon as you make the changes, you push to Git repository, and then those files will be the files will be stored in the Git repository, and then other developer can pull those files into their repository and then start working from there. So that's how the code base is being shared between different developers, and then it's going to be a very effective collaboration and your code doesn't get stored or in your repository of wherever you work. So you can delete any time, doesn't make any difference because you're going to have all your code base saved in the Git repository. So you can take a look at the Git repository, how it looks like. I have my personal Git repository. Usually you will have your corporate Git repository where you can have your own project. Inside the project you have these are the different modules I've built. For example, if I open the EPMDB, so in my last training I have created all these source modules. You can see bunch of functions in this information views, main calculation views. So they are all files. So if you wanted to get started from this particular project, you just clone this repository and put it in your workspace, and you start working on the objects from there. So it's pretty easy to take the objects from Git and put it back to Git. So we'll see a lot of integration. We'll see more integration between Web IDE to Git in the course in one of the weeks. Okay, so and also I would like to move again to the course content again. So this is what we're talking about tooling. We started with Web IDE for HANA, and GitHub is going to be the second major tool which you will be using in every day of your work. So you don't have your repository, then obviously you're going to use Git branching, merging, pull, push, all these. Some of the people who have experience in Web IDE for Fiori developments, they they would have definitely got good understanding of how the Git is being used. If you're not an ABAP developer who developed Fiori applications for UI related changes, only modeler, and definitely this is a new process. You will have to make sure you understand how the Git the integration happens between your Web IDE to Git, because there is no option for you to use the repository HANA Studio. So something like this, when you have HANA Studio or Eclipse, you got your repository in the when you go into your developer workspace, you can see systems, repositories, and then projects. So this is your repository. So you don't have such thing to go back to previous versions and all this. All these things are going to be maintained by GitHub. So not stop working on Studio, but I'm just trying to say, start using when you migrating to Access Advanced. Slowly you will have to start using the GitHub integration. There's no option for you. Okay. And the next tool, what I'm going to talk about, command line tools. You would have not seen this tool in the past, even for above Fiori developments as well. Access command line tool is inherited from Cloud Foundry command line tools, where you go and issue some commands of which you cannot directly do in Web IDE for HANA. Some of the activities to push, to deploy, to delete the services. Initially, Web IDE for HANA is not so mature tool. Even now, it's getting updated frequently by SAP. So some of the actions which cannot be done in Web IDE for HANA, I used to do in a command line tools. So this is very powerful. You can access the system database, access a application server using command line tools. You can install this one. We have already installed. I can show you how to install in the next videos, next recording sessions. So I can show you, and actually Google Cloud Platform gives you the command line tools uh, by default. So you can use these command line tools and log into my server and perform and see what are the services I have. So you can see my previous services, and if I wanted to delete any service, or if you wanted to enhance or modify any services, I can do it from command line tools. Okay, so this is very important. Many times it comes very handy to issue command and get your work done. So we're going to see all these commands, or at least to the ones which we use a lot. So you can see if you try typing help, then you get all the commands listed and some basic information about how to use the command. Okay. And Access Advanced Cockpit. It is another tool which we will be using, which is called Access Advanced Cockpit. So it's an administrator tool, but sometimes you may be asked to perform the administration as well. So you will be looking at this. This is an Access Advanced Cockpit. So you perform creation of users, space, maintenance, organization. These are the terms which you find in Cloud Foundry, Access Advanced. So you will manage the space. You will map the tenant. A tenant means your database tenant, which is your HANA might have multi-tenant database. So you will map one of the tenants to your Access Advanced space, so that you can, whatever the work you do in Access Advanced will go and sit in that particular tenant of your HANA database. We'll go into those details when we move on to the to the tenant mapping and on those activities. And you can have members. These are XSA users, not the database users. So XSA users are different from your database users. The database users have actually have the access in the database objects, and XSA users have the access to develop in WebID for HANA and build those objects and deploy them in specific space. So these kind of activities XSA user can do. Other than these activities, there are more activities done by XSA users in form of application development, but that is not really something which we are going to talk about right now. Okay, so Access Advanced Cockpit, and you also have something called HANA Cockpit. So this is an completely administrator cockpit in 2.0, because the studio has been deprecated and is going to be removed very soon. The administrators currently working in HANA Studio for database administration, tenant creation, mappings, monitoring, alerts, all these things will be done in HANA Cockpit. So the users getting created in HANA Cockpit are database users, and Access Advanced Cockpit is only for Access Advanced Application Runtime users administration. Okay, so if I open this particular tenant, you have system tenant, and then HXE is your data tenant. So you can see the administration of the particular memory usage, alerts, status. Going to see some of the monitoring stuff and data encryption policies, database administration, creating remote source agents, data provisioning. All activities will be done in HANA Cockpit. It's a successor of HANA Studio for administration. For development, the successor of HANA Studio is going to be WebID for HANA. And for administration, HANA Cockpit is going to be the successor. So the basis people will be working on time. So you can also open a SQL console from here. So if they wanted to run any SQL activities to know the tables usage, statistics, etc., they can still do that by using the DBX, running the SQL console from HANA Cockpit. So they don't really come into WebID for HANA to do any of the developments. All the administration will be done in HANA Cockpit. So now it's separated. The development is done in WebID for HANA, and administration is done in Cockpit, unlike how it is done in previously in HANA Studio. Okay, I'll just take a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions. Wow, 8 questions. Okay, system access. That's a very good question. Definitely, most of the people would have this question. So I'm going to answer this question. So the system access is going to be set up for everyone. So I don't really suggest to take any of the external systems, but I can explain what I do for getting the system access. This is the system I've been using for the last 2 years. So this system is from Google Cloud Platform. So you can actually go into, I have a very detailed session for setting up this access. So you don't worry if I'm rushing through, even whatever the topics I'm rushing through, you don't have to be worried at this time, because in 1 hour, I'm just trying to give a kind of a look and feel how we're going to deal this course of the 25 to 30 sessions in the next few days. So don't get overwhelmed that, okay, this is something crazy, which you don't want to get into, but eventually you have to because of the situation. Okay, this is Google Cloud Platform Console, and with your Gmail ID and password, you can get into this one, and then you provide your credit card. And if you're really logging in for the first time into Google Cloud, so you get a 1 year credit, 1 year free credit, or $350. So which is like more sufficient for 1 year, because I hardly used last year, almost 200 hours. It's still coming. So if you use this a system for an hour, it's going to cost you $1 or $2, maximum $2. Hourly cost is $1, but you are getting a credit of 360. So you can have either 360 hours of usage or 1 year. One of the criteria met, and your free subscription will be lost. So which is really good thing. You can actually use it for 1 year. If you're using 1 hour a day, it comes to 8 to 9 months continuously. So that's what my previous experience is. So that's about the access. I will have a session to set up this access. It's going to take 15-20 minutes, and we'll tell how to stop and stop. So if you don't stop it, it keeps counting your time, and then even 2 days, 3 days, it's still going to run it's going to consume all 50 60 hours of time if you do not stop it before when you're closing your work. Okay,